Writing for American Greatness, Jeremy Carl says the Democrats have already left the Union. Now, is that true? No, not literally, but it may as well be true because the ideology of the mainstream left, Democrats and their young DSA type socialist allies, are completely at odds with this country. They literally don't believe in the same history of this country. They believe in changing it from a constitutional republic to a democracy. They do not believe in what this country is, has been, and stands for. Now, has the U.S. done bad things? Yes. Have other countries done bad things? Yes. Have other countries done worse things than the U.S.? Yes. Has the U.S. done great things? Yes. Has the U.S. improved dramatically since its inception? Oh, absolutely. And that's what we believe when we talk about American greatness and what makes America awesome. Now, we've actually made things a whole lot better. But in this article, Carl goes through exactly why it is the Democrats have already left the Union and talking about their ideology and the things they're doing. But let me just stress, look, I've got a clear issue with the establishment that includes the pathetic weakness of the Republican Party, the neocon Republicans who went and joined the Democrats, and the oligarchic elitists that basically stand for the Democratic Party. I have my clear bias in that I believe in a constitutional republic. I believe the Bill of Rights is fantastic. The Constitution is a pretty great thing, and we want to stand up for it. Democrats and many on the left do not. And though you'll hear the lie from them over and over again, from some of them saying, we do, but they certainly support people who don't. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people on the right who certainly have their shortcomings, but it is the exception on the right for people to be authoritarian. And it is the exception on the Democrat side for them to be libertarian. The libertarian type Democrat lefties are few and far between. They don't get a word in edgewise. They're relegated to tiny channels on social media and they're ignored. It's the authoritarian woke cult and the imperialists, the pro-war, never-ending war types that are constantly in the mainstream press. Meanwhile, the freaky weirdos of the right have been completely shunned and booted out by conservatives. So why would I support the authoritarian lunatics that is the Democratic Party? Anyway, the point of this segment, let me show you a few things. Here's a tweet from Damon Linker on Twitter. He's a columnist at The Week. He says, American political debate now consists almost entirely of one side saying, if we don't rout our opponents, American democracy is doomed. While the other side responds, if we don't rout our opponents, American democracy is doomed. You see, this is wrong. Republicans aren't defending American democracy for which it doesn't exist. This country is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic with democratic institutions. That means we democratically elect representatives to represent where we live in different places. It is not a democracy, but popular support still matters in many respects because people who are campaigning saying, I'm going to do this for you. The problem is, over the past several decades, for a long time, the Democrats have repeatedly pushed the narrative of democracy, democracy, democracy. You can see the bias of Damon Linker in his statement. Now, I understand the gist of what he's saying. Both sides are pointing the finger at each other, saying our country faces an existential threat from you. That's more accurate. The problem is that Democrats keep saying democracy. Direct democracy doesn't work. Democracy is not a good thing. If you believe democracy is a good thing as a form of government, you've been manipulated. OK, the tyranny of the majority is not a good thing. Take a look at some of these countries. You can go back to Nazi Germany. And we have that meme where they say it was legal what they were doing. The law supported it. It was popular. They say the meme goes, those who were protecting the Frank family were breaking the law, and those trying to find them were following it. The law does not represent morality, what is right, what is wrong. Now, of course, you can say that doesn't still represent democracy. When all of the people of Nazi Germany were standing in unison doing their salutes, that is the problem of democracy. As the saying goes, democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding on what's for dinner. A republic is a well-armed sheep contesting the vote, or lamb, whatever word you want to use. So here's where I stand. I don't agree with Republicans on a lot of what they believe. But there are many people who should have been liberals who joined the establishment authoritarians in their woke cult and in subverting actual important institutions to make a country work. And in response to this, you can actually see the narrative. Jeet here, verified Twitter user and Substacker, columnist at The Nation, says, are both sides equally committed to letting as many people as possible vote? No, they're not. The left, the Democrats say Republicans just want to suppress the vote. Meanwhile, Democrats are saying 16-year-olds should vote. Certainly there's a line somewhere as to some people aren't going to be voting. Now, we don't want to restrict vote on the basis of race or gender or things like that. But maybe there should be some restrictions on voting, like service guaranteeing citizenship. And that doesn't mean war. It means just be a member of your community, have skin in the game. Because what happens now? People who don't know and don't care vote, and they vote for really screwed up things. You look at these cities that have been under Democrat rule, and it is a disaster. It's a disaster. Chicago is a disaster. And don't you tell me otherwise. They call it Chirac. And the Democrats say clearly gun violence is the problem. And therein lies the real problem. They don't care about what they've done to that city as they've eroded and destroyed it over 80 years. And then they just look at surface level problems. Well, somebody used a gun, therefore the gun's the problem. Bro, if he didn't have the gun, he'd go around beating people or stabbing people. The crime is a problem. But they blame other things. They won't take responsibility. Why? In my opinion, they just want power. I look at the Republicans. And what do? Nothing. They sit around on their hands. Why? Because they don't want to. Okay. That's too bad. Donald Trump wouldn't send in the military to end the riots. All right. He just left the cities to rot and burn. Maybe he thought that if the cities were in shambles, the people there would vote for him. Well, he thought wrong. That's the problem of democracy. Stupid people who don't know or don't care, just trying to fit in, voting because they're going to go out and high five their friends and feel like they fit in, instead of actually caring about what happens to this country and paying attention. Now, I certainly believe, I'm more of the middle ground fence sitter type, right? I certainly think most people should just be able to vote. But the Democrats are the ones trying to expand it to 16-year-olds. Okay, that's absurd. The Democrats are the ones who are actually giving non-citizens in certain circumstances the right to vote. You want to talk about seceding from the union? Sure. The Democrats have already left the union, so saith Jeremy Carl. We'll read the article. Now, literally, it's not the case. But you can make the argument. They don't care for the Constitution. They don't care for the rule, the law of this country. They don't care for 1776, what the founding fathers stood for. So what do they want? Power. I'll break it down for you. Socialists in America could easily go and buy a large swath of cheap land. Why, I think you can get like 100 acres in central West Virginia for like $100,000. Now, this is another thing that really bothers me about how dumb these socialists are. Nobody has $100,000 to buy land. You borrow it. It's called a loan. It's called a mortgage. You put down 5%, $5,000 all you need. You get a loan. Then you get all your buddies. You go and live on this big empty swath of land and you start building. And you can have your socialist utopia. Oh, they don't want it. No, they demand the government tax you and I to pay for what they want while they're not working. Okay, well, I am much more likely to buy a farm and build it and want to be left alone. And probably most conservatives are. And then on their farm community, they'll provide for their family and their friends who are there like a socialist or a commune actually would. Though they're not really communists. At the small level, though, people sort of just say, okay, we got bounty. We're going to share with our friends and family. Why don't the socialists go do that? Why don't they just set up their own little socialist utopias? Why do they just want to take from everyone else? No, they don't want to work. Take a look at the Democrats. They could just leave the union like John Podesta suggested when he said if Donald Trump wins the election, according to the Boston Globe, the West Coast should secede. They could just go do that. Why not? They would rather use their power to take the seats of power in Washington, D.C., and then impose their will over everyone else and extract the value from everyone else. New York is in shambles, so what do? They mass print money, and then Biden bails them out. That money comes from you. It inflates the U.S. dollar and strips you of your value and your labor. That's what they want. If the red states were to leave, what are they going to eat? So they won't do it. And therein lies the very serious problem. How much longer will conservatives stand for this? Can't imagine much longer. Let's read a little bit of this article And then we'll talk about the serious escalation of what it means to be in a cold civil war, or maybe call it hot. There's already been, people storming the Capitol and people getting shot and killed. The new secession crisis. They go to, Jeremy says, it was appropriate that news of Democrats' plan to pack the Supreme Court broke in April, just a couple days after the 160th anniversary of the Confederate attack on Fort Sumter, the shots that began the Civil War. He says, unlike President James Buchanan, who dithered in responding to obvious Confederate aggression, the newly inaugurated Abraham Lincoln acted decisively upon taking office. He informed South Carolina Governor Francis Pickens that he would be resupplying the fort, forcing South Carolina's hand. Lincoln's actions did not start the war. They made it clear that war was already underway. From that point on, Americans, even those who had previously wished to ignore what was staring them in the face, were awakened to the reality of their situation. The dispute between Lincoln and Pickens that led to the attack on Fort Sumter was not simply a political struggle over who should control the regime, but a larger political struggle over which regime it would be. Ultimately, it was a question of whether it would be a nation for free citizens or one that held men and women in bondage. Today's Republicans, like Lincoln, find themselves in a regime-level conflict with the Democrats. The Democrats are firing again and again on our constitutional order, our history, our traditions, our metaphorical Fort Sumter, if you will. But unlike our forebear Lincoln, our elected leadership seems either to be aiding the insurgent left or at best feebly invoking constitutional provisions and principles as if our opponents have shown that their behavior can be in any way constrained by these things. We need to channel the spirit of Lincoln rather than Buchanan to win the struggle. Let me add to this. As the Democrats repeatedly just beat the conservatives over the head and impose their will through cultural institutions and now control of government, Republicans just keep saying Constitution over and over again, as if the people who are literally rewriting history with the 1619 Project care about a Constitution, as if the people who keep lying about everything care. Meme after meme after meme. Republicans think the Democrats are going to take their guns. I just saw a meme right now before starting this video. A guy's like, Republicans think the Democrats are going to come and take their guns. Meanwhile, everyone's talking about aliens. Republicans are so dumb. And I'm like, bro, a bunch of my guns have already been made illegal in a bunch of different states. What the are you talking about? They're already shutting it down. The guy who was nominated to be the head of the ATF, the Waco Wacko, said he wanted to ban every gun, a semi-automatic rifle above 22 caliber. So yes, they do. But these people are lying, or they're just really dumb, because that's what's happening. I'm not going to sit here and defend the Republican Party. They're a bunch of spineless losers for the most part, save like 10 people. And then what happens is you get many of these dumb people posting these memes who say the Republicans are the fascists. The Republicans are doing this. Why? Because the mainstream press lies to them. That's the truth. Was Donald Trump a fascist? No. Was he a racist? No. Did Donald Trump invoke the military to go and shut down peaceful protests? Never happened. Did Donald Trump invoke the military to go and shut down violent riots? No, it never happened. He still didn't do it. Some people wish he did. You know what? The states can be unto themselves. Trump didn't do it. Well, what I see there is that Donald Trump, certainly not a fascist, certainly not perfect, got a lot of problems, got a bad attitude. Kind of dumb for not firing a lot of people. Fascist, though, he is not. So when the mainstream media says he is, and he colluded with Russia and all this other stupid fake garbage, guess which side is lying? Unfortunately, the Republicans are doing nothing. The indictment. The Democrats have already seceded from America's historic conception of nationhood in many respects. They have attacked on a relentless and increasingly hysterical basis white Americans, who, as the overwhelming majority population, were the primary developers of America's cultural, intellectual, and political heritage, with all its successes as well as its shortcomings. In doing so, they attacked traditions, history, and values developed by those generations of Americans that historically bound together Americans of all races, religions, and backgrounds. No, I disagree. He's correct. The Democrats keep saying white, 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 white because they're racists and they're invoking racial identitarianism. I think America is the great, we live in the great American melting pot. We eat Chinese food and Indian food and then somehow make our own versions of it and still call it Chinese food. Why it is, in many ways, white European settlers who came to this country, you still had Native American culture heavily inspire it. I read about the government structures of like the Apache and many Native American tribes and how a lot of this did have influence on, the European settlers. And there's Thanksgiving. So, of course, it's obvious that white Americans white Europeans came here and settled America and then basically made this country. Attacking white Americans isn't what's destroying the heritage. There are many black people, Latino people, and Asians who believe in America. So I don't agree with the framing of that. Actually, I don't like it all that much. I do think it's a problem that they're racists, not because it's just about them going after white Americans' traditions. I think the problem is the traditions created by this country are for everyone. And it's not always been perfect, but it is the case now. Yet the Democrats seek to reverse that. No, America's white traditions were not perfect. And it was the Democrats who created the Klan and Jim Crow and all that stuff. We fought to end that. Now we have a country of, black, brown, white, Asian, mixed race, all sharing the same values of the founding fathers. The Democrats are subverting that, and they're bringing back the racism. He says they have occupied our nation's capital with thousands of troops, as if the American people were a foreign foe. Yeah, and Nancy Pelosi apparently wanted crew-served machine guns. Jeez. They've engaged in bureaucratic and judicial nullification of our laws, particularly on immigration. Perhaps the most important element in determining who makes up the American polity. Donald Trump ran on the platform of toughening up immigration policy. It was a defining issue. Yet the left makes a mockery of the rule of law. It's true. California, they call it a sanctuary state. So when these people come in, and the Democrats then vote that non-citizens can vote, they don't care about this country. They don't care about its laws. If this is truly a nation, then it is citizens who make up that nation and who determine, based on a vote, what should happen. If it was truly democratic, then you would have American citizens dictating this. But you know what? Did you know that illegal immigrants in this country give electoral college voting power to blue states? California, I think, gets one extra electoral college vote because of illegal immigrants, because they're counted on the census. Congressional districts are then made up based on the population of everyone, not just citizens. And that representation then converts into an electoral college vote. So that's certainly subverting our system. And then, of course, they'll keep voting to subvert the system. And Republicans do nothing. They've attacked us through their big tech proxies, damaging our ability to speak freely in the new public square, coordinate political action, or share information with each other outside a tightly controlled corporate media apparatus. They have pursued race-based reparations and wealth confiscation from one set of Americans to another based purely on skin color, a basic contradiction of the Constitution's premise of equal protection under the laws. They have turned their media into a propaganda arm of the ruling political party. They have used instruments of the state, such as the IRS, under Lois Lerner, the FBI, and the DOD, and numerous other agencies to attack political opponents, namely Russiagate scandal and attacking Tucker Carlson. They have blatantly rigged the election process, changing rules in violations of state law, manipulating debate rules in polls, and relentlessly pushing for an unconstitutional federalization of state election laws. While many people believe some, theories about the election, the one thing that is true is that, according to Time magazine, there was a shadow campaign to guarantee the correct outcome. They changed election laws. They changed the rules. They held special events. I say they Ocean's 11'd Trump. Ocean's 11'd. That's how you say it. That means for the year before the election, they were organizing, they were changing election laws and creating a system that heavily benefited one side. And many Republicans were in on it, notably in Pennsylvania, where many Republicans voted for universal mail-in voting in defiance of their own state constitution. So it is the establishment in general. He was going to say they have engaged in systemic street violence against us. That, we all know about Antifa and Black Lives Matter, of which they are not being arrested. They have removed entire groups of Americans who are not in their privileged demographics from roles in government. Biden tweets out a cabinet that looks like America, when his cabinet of 25 has no whites of Protestant origin. I'm not really as concerned as that. But if we do want to have diversity, that means diversity includes white people. They say they have erased our history, tearing down statues, renaming schools. Yep. They have corrupted our jury system, with Representative Maxine Waters and Joe Biden flagrantly involving themselves in a local jury trial, threatening violence, calling for more. They have locked us in our homes. They have attempted, most importantly, to change our fundamental structures of governance, trying to add Puerto Rico and D.C., which is specifically excluded from statehood in the Constitution, as states. I'll disagree on this one. Washington, D.C. should not be a state. Federal jurisdiction should be separate from the state, so there's no undue influence. Puerto Rico should be a state, in my opinion. He says they have not yet been able to accomplish all of these desecrations, that they have not been able to is only due to a couple of moderate Democrats remaining in the Senate. And so, while we should not abandon our attempts to make positive change in the current system, we cannot rely solely on proceduralist maneuvers to attempt reconciliation with people who make it clear they want to defeat and destroy us. Now, I don't completely agree with Jeremy Carl on a lot of his things. The talk about white America and stuff, I don't care for. If in 50 years America is less white, I honestly do not care. I don't believe race is the defining factor of what this country needs to be, should be, and what it represents. However, if the country remained majority white, I also don't care. I don't think race is that important. I certainly think that people self-segregate for sure. But what we need is for people to believe in the core ideals of freedom, liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And in my experience, you can be from any background. Now, what I don't like is the Democrats using race to attack people, to insult their character or imply some kind of malevolence simply on the color of their skin. Why? Racism is wrong. It was wrong back then. It's wrong now. The Democrats seek to bring it back. What I'm worried about is the subversion of our rights, the manipulation of our history, taking away the right to have debate. That's what they're doing. The Republicans aren't strong enough to do anything about it. But here's the main point. The Democrats don't seek to play by any standard American judicial rules. The Daily Mail reports, meet the Dems competing to prosecute Trump. That's right. Trump dared to oppose them. We're at the point now where Donald Trump, who opposed the establishment, could be facing prison time for that reason. Oh, they'll claim he's a criminal and a crook and other stupid nonsense. Come on. It's political. Hillary Clinton didn't go to jail. Trump said a bunch of dumb things about locking her up, and he never did it. He was all bark and no bite. So they call him a fascist. They make up lies about him in the media. The left believes it. And then they rally to destroy our actual constitutional institutions. So I don't know if it's if we should say the Democrats have actually seceded, but I can tell you this. What this really says to me is that the country is fractured. It's not going to be mended. The Democrats don't seek reconciliation or compromise, and the Republicans don't do anything other than just agree with the narrative of the left. So what happens? Either the Democrats just win and everyone just drops to their knees and gives in to what the Democratic establishment wants, which includes many neocons, or fighting happens. I certainly hope not, but I don't know. I don't know what to expect. Just that's, I don't think there's any kind of reconciliation. The divide is so stark that no one will believe anyone else. So it doesn't matter which side you think is right. It matters that you are keeping your ears to the ground and paying attention to what might end up happening. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.